I'm Heather from Stamps by Judith and Heather, and we are going to do a video today showing how to make this fun stone arch. We're going to use dies, we're going to use crystal lacquer, Tombow, watercolor markers, and I'll show coloring. But before we do that, at a lot of shows people ask me what Judith is doing, how she's doing, things like that. Judith, if you don't know, is my mom. She started the business in '91. She's pretty much retired, but I do have what she is working on. This is what she's gotten into. This is kind of one of the stamp images, sort of from way back when, pottery, and she has gotten into carving, and she has her own kiln and her own wheel, and she's now gotten into pottery and clay. So I just wanted to show everybody, this is a handmade Santa that she has fired and glazed, and she has now started doing a few small shows with her pottery as well. So she's doing well and enjoying her retired time and trying new hobbies and new outlets for her art. So I thought I'd show everybody what she was doing. All right, here is our finished card. I'll step you through how to do the stone arch with the hummers. Let me set that aside. I have my arch already stamped. Stamped it in the watercolor black pad. This is T60. There's my stone arch. And what I'm going to do here is just lay a quick layer of the N95 gray down, because we're going to actually cut another one of these arches out with the die and put it over the top. But I always like to put a little color on the bottom layer, just so you don't see the white glaring from below. So you just quickly lay down some gray. Again, that's the N95 gray. There it is. And here is the die I cut out. It is or the image I cut out with the die. It's a two-part die, so you'd have it that way. So I ran it through with my die cutter. And I already laid gray out on this, so I'm just going to set this one aside at the moment. And we'll go make this one be the one that's more detailed in its color. So I'm going to take my N95 and tap it to the tip of my N65 so I can get the two colors to blend together, so I start modeling my stones. Move my die out of the way. What this does is give you a nice watercolor effect. And since they're rocks and stones, they don't have to be perfect. And I'm actually going to put a lot more color on these. Make some lighter and some darker. Doesn't have to take forever to do this, because again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I got that, and then I'm just going to come back in and go in between the rocks, make the mortar or the grout in the rocks a little bit darker. I'm not doing it everywhere, but enough you can see that this is already starting to give it dimension. Or if you look at the one that I originally just laid down the one layer of gray, it looks flat. It doesn't have any pop. Come in, set the light gray down, take some dark gray just in a few areas. Okay, put the right lids back on the right markers. I'm going to come back in with 942 tan, and basically the brush strokes I'm doing are just little swipes of color. They're not perfect, they're not even really planned, just going around, changing some of the color on the rocks. And then I'm going to grab a 491. It's a soft teal that gives kind of a brightness to the rocks. I have that. And then I'm going to take a 992. It's a soft khaki. A little bit of khaki here and there. Okay, I'm going to take the 192 green and just add a little bit of moss and to the weeds. Start coloring that. Got leaves. And then I'm going to take the 553 blue. So I'm actually using a lot of color on the rocks, but they're not really bright pops. They're just sort of soft, subtle colors. And there basically are my rocks. So if you wanted to take a look, those are my color choices for rocks. When I should show you, I've had a lot of people ask, I have my two markers, my N95 and my N65. I have tape around the lid because in some lights the marker lids seem so close. I often grab the wrong one, so I just put tape around the lid so I know which one is my light color versus my dark. Here are my rocks, and what I will do, I'm not going to do it right now, but put a little bit of double stick tape behind it to give it a little dimension. I would go over that. We want to give it a little base, so we're going to go to the one that's on our page first. Slide that over, a little bit of green. The 553 blue. A 942 tan. And I'm going to take the N95 gray on this one and go put a shadow around it. Because then when I put this one down, the shadow is already behind it. Okay, so I have that. Then I'm going to stamp. If you look at this one, I have all sorts of flowers and leaves. So I have my little 3-leaf stubby. Just going to come in and build up some foliage places. They don't have to be the same every time. Make it look like it's climbing. Okay. And then even though this will be on the top, the ivy would climb on the rocks as well. So I will stamp a few on here. So we do that. And then to color these, so there, I'm going to start off with the 133, it's a soft lime. And you can see how carefully I'm coloring in my leaves, just a quick brush stroke. Come back on the ones that are on the arch. Get that. But one color looks flat, so I'm going to grab the 192 green. A little bit green, and then I'm going to grab the 195 green, just kind of touch at the base of each leaf. And that'll give it a different green tone. That. And that darker green will also make the ones that are on the arch a little more noticeable, or be a little more noticeable. Oops, and I missed a leaf. Okay, so I have my leaves on my arch. I'm going to come in, adjust that a little bit. I ran it through the die cutter. I had got it off the edge just a little bit. There's nothing wrong with coming back and adding a little color. Okay, so I have that. I'm going to take my Fir Branch, my C69 Fir Branch, and just a scratch sheet of paper and my Hunter Green ink pad. And just stamp some greenery. We have a little bit of greenery. Bring just a little bit of the green up into the Fir Branch and the blue. I have that. Oops. And then forgot to take and add my gray shadow to the inside of my arch. So we go from flat arch to an arch with dimension. And then I've got my fuzzy flower top stick and my rainbow ink pad. stamp it in my yellow. I'm just going to stamp it a couple times to create little fuzzy flowers. Do the ones hanging down a little bit. Do one more in there. I'm going to move up to kind of the red tones. One more. So there are my red flowers. And I'm going to have my little three tiny flowers. And add some little purple pops. They're not overly noticeable in there, but they're there. And then switch up to the blue. I have that. And then what I would do up here where I have scratch paper, because this will get cut off, slide this down a bit. I'm going to stamp a couple mushrooms. And one stick mushroom. And to color these, let me move the ink pad. I'm going to take and color one with the 743. It's a bright pink. And then I'm going to tap my bright pink to my 847 red. So I can blend these together. Come back in with the red. Okay, I'm going to take 491, color my mushroom top the soft teal. I'm going to tap it to the 452. So I get a kind of a bright blue mushroom. And then I'm going to come back in with the 992. To create one mushroom stem. Take the 992 and tap it to the 977. Color in the spots on the mushroom. And if anybody's heard our videos before, of course, our birds have to start chirping when I'm talking. I'm going to take the 942, color in the mushroom stem, and then tap it to the 977. I don't want to make my mushroom stems look exactly the same, so one's got a yellow hue and one's got a red hue. I'll color in the spots. Now the little mushroom, I'm going to come back in with the 133 lime and then use the 192. I'm just doing little taps to kind of shade it. And then I'm going to do the 942 and the 977 for the stem. Now for these three mushrooms, I do have a die for the little one, but I forgot to make a die for the medium too. So I've already cut them out by hand. And for these, you can take your mushrooms, and I'd put a little double stick behind them, and you can put your mushrooms wherever you want. And then we need to add a little bit of wildlife. So I have my right and left, do them this way, right and left hummingbird stubbies. And my black ink. I'm going to put one hummingbird that way. And a couple hummingbirds that way. Then to color these guys, we need to add some cheek, their little ruby throats. And then to color my birds, going back to the 133 lime green. There's my bright little birds. I'm going to take the 942 tan, just add a little bit of the tan. And then the 192 green. And that's about all I'll do to them. So I have that. I want my hummingbirds to have some motion, so I'm just going to take a fine line pilot pen and just take and add some swirls coming off my hummingbirds. Now be careful not to rest your hand on these dots, because then you'll transfer them elsewhere. So excuse my hand for just a moment. I should have done the lower one first. Like that. So I have the little swirls. And then here's the finished card. I have lots of swirls around, but there's a little bit, if you look, there's a little bit of color in the background, and then crystal lacquer on the rocks. So the color in the background, it's a very fancy tool. It's a paper towel. I chose it because it has some texture. And I'm just going to take and I'm just kind of tapping it. I do tap it in more than one color, and then I build up the different colors. And then the crystal lacquer is what gives the shiny area on it. Crystal lacquer is this product right here. And what you do, move my card out of the way, is you squeeze it on and you leave it dry. How long it takes to dry really depends on how thick you apply it and how humid it is. I always opt to give it an hour though, because you cannot tell the difference between wet lacquer and dry lacquer. They look the same, and if it's wet and you go to touch it, you will wreck it. So I always give it an hour. Now, to keep my crystal lacquer from having this little tip dry out once lacquer's in the tip, I have a cup with a damp paper towel at the bottom. I rest my crystal lacquer in there. That will keep the tip open. I use mine to attach glitter and wire and glass beads and all sorts of things, so I don't ever put mine away. So to keep my paper towel from drying out, I just take a plastic bag and wrap it around there, and that keeps my paper towel from drying out. I have to change the paper towel out now and then because it does get a little dirty. but it doesn't leak out of the bottle, and that keeps it open so I can always use it. I have that, and once this is all down, you'd have basically this finished card.